And now we're on to the third series of exercises, the strengthening exercises. We'll be utilizing some different things like a chair, some yoga blocks, but really all of these movements can be done at home and at your own level of strength. So we'll try to modify it as best as we can if you're having some trouble with these. Here we're going to really target the serratus anterior muscle with some seated wall slides. You've probably seen these before or even tried them if you've done PT, but we're going to change it up a little bit and put you down in a chair with your knees up against the wall. You're then going to have your elbows against the wall, thumbs out so palms are facing toward you. You'll do a couple of scapular protraction and retractions while maintaining the protracted position. While you have everything locked in place, you're going to then gently slide your forearms with your elbows still touching the wall, up and down in a controlled manner. We're not going too far as to extend through the back or lose our stack position of the low ribs down and over the pelvis. Now you can put your hands in whatever position you feel like. I personally like to do this with the palms facing toward me, as this will keep the lat muscles from being overactive in this position. So that way you get more of the serratus anterior. And to be sure that you're hitting the serratus, you should feel a light burn through the area on the side of the rib cage just below the armpits. And we will complete 3 rounds of 10 to 20 reps of this exercise. Some common mistakes we'll see with this seated wall slide is extending too much with the low back. So as you're going into shoulder flexion, you'll see a lot of people use their low back muscles to posteriorly orient the rib cage as a whole in order to get that shoulder flexion to happen. Our goal with this activity is to keep the rib cage in place over the pelvis, so that way we can get the true shoulder flexion to occur and get the scapular upward rotation utilized by the serratus anterior. Another common mistake we'll see with this is shrugging the shoulders up and utilizing more of the upper traps rather than the serratus anterior itself. If this is occurring, you just may need to reduce the range of motion that you're trying to utilize in order to make sure you really have that serratus anterior working well. The next exercise in the series is the rough country bear crawls. You're going to need some books, yoga blocks, really whatever you have, and they can be of varying heights. And what you're going to do is assume that bear position that we practiced earlier, but with the knees off the ground. Now what you'll do is just walk over top of the books or the yoga blocks in varying fashions, from side to side, forward, backwards, diagonals, really whatever you want to do. We'll be completing this for a timed effort, so 30 seconds to 1 minute, or really whatever you can tolerate. We're utilizing this exercise to again strengthen the serratus anterior while also learning how to maintain the positions that we previously utilized in the repositioning series. The varying heights and directions utilizes different parts of the serratus muscle, as well as building a more reflexive nature at the shoulder joint, which is utilized for more dynamic activities. And as a positive byproduct, you get a really good core workout out of this exercise. So some common mistakes we'll see with this exercise is as you're doing the crawling, you'll keep your knees too high off the ground and your butt is over your head. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it will tax your shoulders a little bit faster and you may not feel as much core engaging. We'll also see people want to do this with their back pretty extended and sinking down into the shoulders. And in this circumstance, they're really just using their low back to stabilize versus their abdominal muscles and serratus anterior. We'll also see people overutilizing the pecs and the anterior chest wall muscles in order to stabilize when they round their back a little too much. Now, if you're really struggling with this exercise and you just feel like you don't have enough strength, one thing you can do is just progress the bear repositioning exercise we did earlier in the series and just lift the knees up and treat this more as a plank. You can then build up strength, say doing 3 rounds of 30 to 60 second holds while breathing all the way out and all the way in the same fashion as the repositioning. And this should help you build up the strength required to do more of the rough country bear crawls. For our last strengthening exercise of the series, we will be using a bench and 1 yoga block or some books. Now you'll set yourself up in pseudo bear position with your knees slightly bent and you're at about say 20 to 40 degrees of hip flexion. Now you'll set up like you're gonna do a normal push-up, but you're going to have one hand on the book or the block, whereas the other hand is flat on the bench. You'll then lower yourself down toward the bench and press away. And as you press away, you're really gonna push through the book or the block in order to get the opposite hand off the bench. This is another exercise that's really good for strengthening that serratus anterior while simultaneously strengthening the pec muscles. And I really like this because it strengthens one side at a time and makes this more of a unilateral exercise for that serratus anterior, which is especially helpful if you have, say, one shoulder that leans out more than the other. Now, a really simple way to progress this incline version is just to take it down to the floor. But what you'll see is that this is very, very difficult to maintain that scapular position, especially on the downward phase of the bear push-up. So personally, I would be sticking to the incline variation until that shoulder blade was sticking a little bit better. But it doesn't mean I can't do this variation if I'm just going for some push-up and pec strength that I wanted to get. And again, the setup and execution is exactly the same as the incline variation, just without a bench or hands on a coffee table. Lastly, you would want to complete 3 sets of 10 to 15 reps of either the incline or the floor variation of these push-ups in order to get the appropriate stimulus for strengthening these scapular muscles. Typically, you'll see most of these common mistakes pop up in the floor variation of the offset push-up, but the biggest one we'll see is just extending through that low back and stabilizing with the spinal erector muscles versus keeping the knees slightly bent and able to maintain that position of the rib cage versus the pelvis to keep that abdominal tension working. So if you made it to this part of the video, I just want to say thank you so much for watching my content, as I'll be posting more videos to come on different postural issues, as well as just general strength training and rehabilitation practices. I'll also invite you to check out the blog post on my website at waughpersonaltraining.com, where there will be a full written out version of this video where you can follow along and do some of the exercises, and sign up for a free 20-minute posture and movement assessment.